Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this edition of RE380, where I take old stories I've narrated and updated into modern audio standards. This particular story is called Focus, written by amphicoelias. I swear to this day they looked happy when I told them the news. My species was facing a potential extinction, and the humans looked happy. I noticed it first in the translator, that glint in her eyes. It's one of the few human expressions I'm confident I understand. It signals happiness. My own translator told me the rest of her body expressed fear, concern, compassion, and worry. But indeed, there was eagerness in her eyes. I couldn't believe it. We had been allied to the humans for over 50 years. We were mutual first contacts until 3 weeks before my talk with the ambassador. Each of our species had believed the other to be only the other intelligent life in the galaxy. Yes, they called us space olives, and we called them glue feet, but that was merely a teasing of friends. Why would they be happy at our destruction? I reasoned it was perhaps only the human translator. Perhaps she was one of those fundamentalists. I would have to flag her as a potential security risk. But no, the translator had by now conveyed my message, and the ambassador had that same glint. Were they perhaps glad of the impending arrival of the warships? Would they try to ally with the new aliens instead of us? Did they consider us weak? My fears were quickly put to rest by the ambassador's response. His country, at least, would come to our aid, and he hoped that the others would too. They did. Japan, Monaco, Namibia, even the Union of Sorbian Asteroids, each sent basically the same message. In 20 years' time, when the warships of the third race would arrive, the space olives and the glue fleet would face them in battle together. As the next 2 decades unfolded, I saw our human friends throw themselves almost gleefully into war preparations. At the time of my talk with the ambassador, the average travel time between Sol and Alpha Centauri was 8 years. In 5 years, they had cut it down by 24%. Another 5 years, and the cruisers began arriving. 1 every 3 months. Our laser array had trouble slowing them all back down to non-relativistic speeds. They simply pushed them out there and assumed that we would catch them. We were utterly perplexed. Yes, the humans had warred in the past. We had too. Neither of us were pacifists. But nothing had suggested the humans liked war. Humans had been looked up to as enlightened peacemakers. They hadn't even built a military spaceship before. Yet here they were, mounting railguns on artificial space mountains. It made no sense. Not that we were complaining. Hostile aliens would arrive in 10 years. Space mountains were certainly better than pop guns and lifeboats. Still, some were getting worried. Why were they sending so large a force to defend the world not their own? Did they perhaps have an ulterior motive? Were they planning a takeover? I didn't have time to think about any of that. I had our own efforts to monitor, meetings to oversee, and unexpectedly large numbers of soldiers to feed. 40 human vessels were eventually stationed in our system, each with an average crew of 1,200. That's 48,000 humans that we had to grow food for in the end. And they were so diverse. We had foreseen the Russians, the Chinese, the Indians, and the US. The Germans and the Turks were a bit weird, but okay. The TUS Taluni was a bit step too far. Who proposed that idea? Who approved it? Hey, our 3 countries together barely have 100,000 military personnel. Let's build a space cruiser. And then the Swiss arrived. The humans appeared completely swept up in preparations. At times I got the feeling that we were just an afterthought. One ambassador's request particularly comes to mind. I'll paraphrase. Hey, your species is less affected by heat and weightlessness than we are. Can we use you as engine crews? If not, it's fine too. We'll send a message back for more crew. In hindsight, all this activity was much weirder than those excited eyes. But none of it bothered me as much. I guess it all just went by too fast. It feels like one moment I was standing in that meeting room, and the next I'm overlooking the battle. The battle itself went by even quicker. I know it took over a day, and I can remember parts of it. The time and harmony exploding almost immediately. The Taloni taking a direct hit. That crazy bastard Zukov giving the ramming order. The long slingshot around Proxima. And the slog of the ending. I know all of that happened. It just feels like one moment I'm overlooking an Allied fleet on its approach, and the next I'm seeing the last third ship buckle under the bombardment. I look over to the human admiral and the rest of the crew, and the glue feet look sad. Sure, my translator told me they looked mostly relieved, but, as I said, I mostly understand eyes, and their eyes looked sad. I trusted my translator, though. After all, no species would be sad at winning, right? Of course not even humans. This becomes obvious rather quickly. They celebrated with us. They mourned their dead. They withdrew their battleships from our systems, much to the relief of all our governments. Humans are, after all, not a warlike species. At least, they don't want to be. It wasn't until the next round of trade negotiations that I understood their reaction. Now, no one has ever enjoyed these meetings. I myself found them somewhat dull. But I understand that they were important. I felt good afterwards, knowing I had done something which bettered the lives of both our species. However, this time the ambassador didn't look mildly annoyed, as I expected. He looked bored. My translator did not need to tell me this. It was plainly obvious. Our species has visual sensors on its entire body, so it's not very unusual to turn or move during a conversation. But when someone whose main sensory organs are in one spot is not pointing them at you, you notice. The ambassador was looking outside at Proxima. It was, of course, too far to see, but you could just tell he was looking at the debris still orbiting that star. I asked him if perhaps he wanted to be back there, trying to be tactful. No, he said. Clearly things are better now, at peace. He paused for a moment before uttering the most human sentence I have ever heard. But at least out there is a clear what is right. Understanding does not come gradually, or all at once, but in small steps. That last sentence is one of those steps for me. It made me understand a bit more about the humans. I understood why the species of such skillful engineers struggled so hard to cope with the warming of their planet. I understood those happy eyes 20 years ago. I understood why they were so dejected now. Humans grew up in a place where their primary threat was being mauled to death. The environment was not particularly nice. Food scarcity, occasional drought, but at least there were no invisible clouds of poison. Where the humans grew up, if something wanted to kill you, you could see it. As a result, they are very good at dealing with clear, noticeable problems. Show them a broken tool, they will fix it. Point a weapon at them, they will defend. Lob an asteroid at their planet, they will deflect. Humans crave these kinds of problems. They can understand them, they're good at them. Solving them is a clear accomplishment. It makes them feel good. The thirds had been such a problem. Trade agreements were not. Humans, of course, understand that mundane, intricate bureaucracy is useful. Their higher brains are perfectly capable of understanding the logic. But an agreement which will invisibly nudge 2 billion people further from poverty over the course of 50 years does not give them the same satisfaction as a victory over a single clear threat. For 20 years, they had had such a threat. They had had a clear goal. After the battle, they were not sad because they had won. They were sad over what they had lost. They had lost their focus. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.